Hello, welcome to the Same Page podcast. My name is Susan Barlow, and I will be your host today. The Same Page podcast is a series of podcasts where we are going to interview both family members and individuals with disabilities to talk about lessons learned, things they wish they knew way back when, specifically around employment and transition and life. So, the podcast is sponsored by RAISE, and RAISE is a National Technical Assistance Center that provides support to parent centers across the country, specifically around topics related to transition to adulthood as well as employment. So, stay tuned and sit back and relax. So, let's get started. We are going to be introducing our panelists today. Crystal and Everett, could you take a second to introduce yourselves?
Sure, you want to go first there, Mom?
Sure, I can go first. Hi, my name is Crystal, and first and foremost, I am Everett's mother for the last almost 40 years. I live in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania, with my little rescue dog. Um, I'm a proud grandparent of Everett's little girl who happens to call me honey. I'm retired special education, 30
Yay!
years, and currently teaching yoga and do reflexology. So that's me.
Very
And,
cool. Very
yeah, and
cool.
I'm Everett. I guess I'm the son. And so I live also in Pennsylvania in Allentown, which is in Northeast Pennsylvania, purposely about an hour and a half away from my mother, who I love and adore. But Allentown is mentioned in a Billy Joel song, and they make it sound like it's really awful to live here. It's not that bad. It's really okay. And I am a person with a disability. I have cerebral palsy, and I've had that my entire life. And I pick on my mom and say I live far away on purpose, but honestly, we have learned and grown together as I guess son and mom throughout my entire life at least. And so I wouldn't be where I am without my mom today. So I'm happy to be here to kind of share the things that we learned throughout our journey together.
Well, I'm going to thank you in advance for your time and sharing your wisdom with us. So, my first question is to you, Crystal.
Okay.
How have things changed for you since you were a young parent until now? I mean, you were
Well,
mom,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I mean, I was a single parent. Um, and so things have changed. I mean, I think this question could eat up the entire podcast with my answers, honestly, but I have far more wisdom. Everett has far more wisdom. But I mean, in terms of being an educator, there's a lot more inclusivity and community in schools and um, a massive focus on transition. Um, but I'm also far less worried than I was as a young parent, right? Because um, he has created his best life, like his own version of the American dream. And I mean, he's clearly taken the reins as a person who, in terms of his advocacy for disability and youth engagement. So, I mean, I'm able to sit back now and kind of enjoy the fruits of the labor, I guess you want to say, and just watch it continually evolve. So, um,
Very
yeah,
cool.
Well,
yeah.
and my perception, and we always joke about this or talk about this, Sue, is that as a kid, I always felt like my mom uh, was following the advice of
Uh-huh.
experts, quote unquote,
Hmm.
right? And then there came a time that I think my mom realized that I had
Yeah,
to have my own voice. And not that she never didn't listen to me, because we always communicated. It's been one of our blessings as
yeah.
mother and son. But I think that she started to trust our instincts a little bit more as what we felt we needed for there to be success for us as a family, and not always just do what a doctor said, or take what they say
Mhm.
as like the only option, right? Because life
Right. Mhm.
takes many forms and things like that. So I feel like that's how things have changed. We've become more of a uh, conversational in that whole idea, instead of just listening to what other people say and being critical thinkers
For
together.
sure.
I think too.
Mhm. For
For
sure.
sure. Okay, so my
Yeah.
next question for you, Crystal, is I work
Yeah.
with parents who have kids with disabilities for the past 42 years. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it might look like,
Thank you for
I'm
doing
so,
that.
yeah. But I came across a lot of families who kind of fit into one of two categories. Either they were
Mhm.
families who felt like their children were never going to be independent, and that they
Yep.
needed to have their eyes on, and they had fears about their children taking the bus or going and getting a job.
Yep.
And then I worked with families who really promoted independence in their children.
Mhm.
I guess my question is, and I'm pretty sure I can guess the answer, where do you fit in this, and did that, wherever you are now, evolve from where you were before?
I did a segue for
True.
this, I think.
Well, I was just going to say that what you just talked about, Everett, that whole piece about being a young parent and um, just following what the powers that be tell you to do because you have no idea. And anybody would feel the same when you're, faced with something you've never experienced. You you go to those who are educated around it and share their knowledge with you. But so I did follow that at first, and then I don't even know, I can't even guess an age when I decided to um, not be against them, but I know him best, and I want him to really be able to do his own thing, like to no matter what he did you do your best? Because he's going to know if he did his best or not. And then it's on him, and to make it work, whatever he was doing for it, how his body feels. I mean, I still to this day have no idea what it feels like to be in a body with cerebral palsy. So I cannot assume that this is how he should get from point A to point B, if it's easier for him. And I really think I definitely was the parent of um, figure it out for yourself. That sounds awful, but
Oh.
I wanted him to make his own mistakes because I've learned my life lessons from mistakes, right? And um, not just from a parent insisting that you do it a certain way because yeah, it just felt better to me that this works better for me, mom, and okay, well
Well,
then do it that way.
when I
So
and I have a vivid memory, mom, of, I mean, I can pinpoint it where you kind of went
okay.
from this um you early on, probably up to almost kindergarten, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to do everything for me, right? It was all on a schedule. We get dressed now. This is when we shower. This is when you wake up. This is when you do that. And then somebody said, I still don't know who that was, but they said, hey, why can't he do that, some of that on his own? And it
Mhm.
was like your brain shifted away
Yeah.
from
Hmm.
I'm gonna do this for him to I'm going to put him in situations where he can figure it out on his own time. And there were often times too where my mom would literally give me a task and I would agree to do this. It wasn't like I was like, it wasn't like she was like, do this now or you're not going to get, macaroni and cheese or whatever. It was like, we're gonna practice this. But mom was really good at walking away and saying, take as much time as you need to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you
I was
do,
screaming inside.
Of course.
let's talk about how we did this, right? So it was like I learned how to get dressed that way, learned how to tie my shoes that way, learned how to, do fine motor activities that I
Mhm.
struggle with my own way because she gave me the space to do it that way. And so there
Well,
was like this
mhm.
mind shift away from I need to help and support Everett do everything to I'm going to help him learn and be okay with how I do the things that I was doing.
I think one of the examples that popped up for me was, always encouraging standing, right? Because that's what the powers that be said, that, we have to stand, we have to walk. And um, we understand now it's very overrated walking, right? Or
Well,
standing. So,
for me,
right,
for us, for
right.
me, it was for me.
But
Yeah.
I vividly remember doing chores to get your allowance, like a lot of children get, and it was doing the dishes. So standing at the sink to do the dishes, and um kind of like that walking away, like you said, I could see there was still cheese on the plate or whatever, but I didn't say a thing because I feel like he tried his best. I went back and cleaned them later and did that for a long time until I felt like, okay, he's pretty confident in this. Now it's okay to say, hey, you missed the bacon over here or whatever. So he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't deflated um, right away. So
And I
that
still like to
and
do dishes. I still like to
yeah,
do
he
them.
does. It's weird.
Yeah,
Do you? What's wrong
I
with
ask
it?
my ask my wife. I don't mind.
We call it the
Totally fine.
dignity of
Great.
risk.
Yep.
The dignity of
Yep.
risk is kind of what we're talking.
Yes.
It's good
Yes.
to be able to be allowed to take
Mhm.
risks
Yeah.
and make mistakes,
Right.
and
Right.
that's what it sounds like. Speaking of, when Everett first told you he was getting married and ultimately became a dad, what
Yeah.
was your initial reaction? And I've been waiting to ask you this question for a while.
Oh, have you? Oh
I
my
have.
gosh. Well, because of who he was marrying. Yeah, I mean, I was over the moon excited for them. And I mean, he had moved on purpose to be closer to
Mm-hmm.
her and to create his career in that area in Pennsylvania. So I mean, I really feel like I'm blessed that we've always been able to have pretty ridiculously open conversations around relationship. Um, and
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I couldn't be happier for him. And it was exciting. I couldn't wait to plan and go on the wedding. I mean, it was a cruise. It was awesome. Like,
Yeah, I guess we,
so
we we did get married on a cruise ship. We did in
they
port in
did, yeah.
Miami. We
Very
did. Yeah.
cool.
Yes, it was like a week-long party, definitely. Um, but they've created a really wonderful life together, and um, they're a wonderful team, really. And um, so, and then kind of fast forward to the little girl. I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name, but she calls me honey, and she's just she is a wonderful blend of the two of them. She's um, also kind of being guided in the way of um, say what's on your mind and
Mm-hmm.
kind of with confidence, right? And but they're a wonderful team, and I do think
What
you can
was there?
correct
What,
me.
what was there not though, Mom? I mean, you're not wrong about anything you're saying. You were nervous though about being a grandma, just because I don't think you really wanted to be a
Well,
grandma.
I
That
was a
was
young
one,
mom,
but
so being a
but I can.
grandma only because a lot of my friends like are like have custody of their grandchildren, and I knew that wouldn't be the thing. It's just Yeah, I guess I was selfishly like, I'm
No,
not ready for this. But
but yeah,
but now it's like
but
she
but
was
the
always
other
there.
thing too, like my mom being who she is, the we're in our, I guess, what do they call that? I don't, the afterbirth suite, whatever the hotel they
Recovery,
did.
kind of like the recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like we're living there for a couple days, right? So my mom is coming in and she's like already got baby carriers that are like can fit around me 4 words, and we're talking about how am I
Yeah.
going to hold this baby and what am I going to do to feed it and how am I going to do the diaper change, and like looking at different bassinets, and we were able to find a crib that was like fully motorized,
Hydraulic.
that it raised and lowered to my level. But that was mom being like,
Right.
we got to find solutions, and she would just come over, and again, reverting back to when I was 7 years old, it's like, let's try this, and if it doesn't work, that's okay, but we'll try something. And so really helping me find my independence as a dad, because she knew that you can't rely on one parent to, like, or you shouldn't have to. Like,
No.
you created
Yeah.
this together, so let's figure things out to make it
Well,
Awesome.
easier.
and on that note, Everett's father was absent, has been, still is, and so I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the value of a parent being right there all the time is, yeah. So
Yeah.
what that should really feel like to a child. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, Everett, I'm going to ask you a question, but before I do, I'm going to ask you a different question, which is first tell me a little bit about what you do for a living now.
Sure. So I currently am an independent contractor with a disability owned and operated consulting firm focusing on advocacy and coalition building around people with disabilities and helping people to elevate. But I also work with a lot of national technical assistance centers that focus on, and my focus is primarily helping young adults with disabilities find their voice and to be engaged in the processes that impact them when they're going from school to adulthood. I think that my mom being a job coach for almost 30 years, it kind of influenced my direction. But I feel like I found my voice as a young person with a disability by being a part of programs like that. And I found a lot of value in connecting with people to bring it to pay it forward. Right. And so I also get the chance to adjunct at a community college uh, most semesters. And so pretty busy right now. But it's been a journey to get to that space. But I think having my mom be a job coach, she was very focused on helping me to identify things I didn't want to do, things I like to do, and to kind of think about my post secondary options, which has led to this career that I've built for myself now. And I feel very blessed. But I used to hate it when I was like younger. I used to hate all the things that were about looking at jobs or trying out programs. It was
And when you were
very
younger,
unfun.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you were
Unfun.
younger, did you have a sense of what you thought your career was going to be? When-
Honestly,
He
I can
liked
honestly
running the
say
cash register at Hershey Chocolate World.
that's because there was girls there. That was, that was, but honestly, Sue, I would say I did not, because I got to college and just assumed that I was going to get some kind of degree and I guess do something. And I quickly realized that I really had no plan outside of I had gone to a school to play adaptive sports, right? And that was so uh and mom was wholly supportive in that too. But that was like my probably my life existence from like age 12 to 19 was literally like, I'm going to become a
Mhm.
wheelchair basketball player and do whatever I got to do to get to college. Right. And that's what I did. And when I got there, I literally almost had no vision about what a paying job would be that I could actually do outside of being an adult. And that does not mean my mom didn't have me do programs and be a part of those things. But we did all those steps. And I still was like, got to that end and was like, I don't really know. I don't know if I thought I had a plan and I didn't like it is I guess kind of where it kind of landed, if that makes sense. The basketball didn't go well. I felt like I
Mhm.
was too far from home, and my vision of what I thought my future was going to be kind of got turned on its head. So not initially, but I've been very blessed to kind of find my way. Um,
Did you have career like assessments or vocational assessments when you were younger that would help you to guide your future in some ways? And why are you both laughing?
Go ahead, Mama. Go ahead.
Well, I guess, just kind of going off whatever it said about, even his experience at college initially got kind of like flipped upside down, and even goes back to that opportunity, right, to go try something, and it's really okay if it doesn't pan out. Um, it's just a shift, right? But you kind of have to take responsibility at the same time. And so when you ask about assessments, I
I,
mean,
I think I
I
did. I did the things, Sue, that were, when you'd go down to the computer lab and fill out a questionnaire and they'd spit
mhm,
out careers, and then and we did all that, and I would talk to people, but then I can vividly remember I wanted to be a sportscaster in middle school, and
yeah.
my mom connected me to a local news station that I
Mhm.
got to see what it meant to be a sportscaster.
Mhm.
I did not want to be a sportscaster after that. I was like, no
You
thanks.
tried it, you looked at it, and then
I
Yeah.
looked
said you
at it and
Yeah.
that was it. But then like she signed me up for like summer programs every summer that were like go and I was weeding, washing windows, I was doing data entry, I was all sorts of
Yeah.
places working with people doing those things. But it really wasn't until we got to VR that we started to really look at like vocational rehab in terms of looking at what I could do in terms of college. But even after all of that, what I thought I was going to do, like college didn't really work out the way it was supposed to. So I really had to like reevaluate almost at the age of 19 to figure out where I was going to go. And only after that did I start to map out a plan that actually made sense to get to an income that wasn't,
Mhm.
working at Chocolate World. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
those job tryouts are so
Yes.
critical.
Yes.
yes,
Oh, it's so critical
yes.
Hmm.
to,
I
as
knew
I
that I
say,
wanted to
try
go
it
to
on for
college based on
size,
them.
try it on for size and see what fits.
Hmm. Right.
Yes, yes.
Which
Hmm.
then brings me to one of my very favorite questions that I ask people was if you were in
Okay.
a room full of families and parents and individuals with disabilities, and you had this room full of people, what would be one of your biggest pieces of advice to to them based on where you came from, like your history, what you know now, your lessons learned?
Assume competence.
Assume confidence.
Mhm.
Assume that
Yeah.
he's going to get it.
Yes. Hmm.
Excellent. I want
Yeah.
I, I,
Assume that they
Go
want to
ahead, Mom.
try, that he wanted to try. And yep. So one piece, assume competence. Yep.
Well, and I think to kind of go off that, I didn't always want to try things, but I was willing to hear out why I was doing them. Right. So one of the things I would say to families is explain why you're doing things. Right. Include your child in the conversation, and then when it becomes Everett, you don't have a choice. You're going to try this job, or
Mhm.
you're going to get a summer job, Everett. You don't have a choice,
Right.
right?
Pick
Let's
one.
pick one, right? Right?
Right.
Pick one. At least, even though it's like, I might be kicking and screaming in the beginning, I get it, right? I get it.
Yeah.
But then also, though, when there are things that feel like it's a red flag or a full stop for example, Sue, I didn't get my license until I was 22 years old because driving scared me to the nth degree. And to some extent, I have limitations when it comes to driving a vehicle, right?
Mhm.
And so I had to come to terms with that. And my mom had to come to terms with that. Like there are limits. And so we now know that. And the people that support me respect that. And so, and that's not something that ever gets brought up again about how we're not achieving a certain level or whatever. It's just we
Right.
figured out solutions to make it work for me. Right. So there's times to kind of sit back and say, is what my child's saying, is that a time where I need to stop pushing and hear what someone's saying? So it
Mhm.
also means don't be afraid to fail is the last thing I would say.
Right.
And to like change course. Um,
Yep.
And
yeah.
you're using driving as an example, which is great because that's one of those, we call them reversible versus irreversible decisions our children make, you know. And
That's
driving,
great, Sue.
you know, driving
Yes.
is if you don't get it right, there's some real could be some real
Right.
so
Yes.
Yes.
I
You're right.
ask you,
You're correct.
Crystal, how did you
Mhm.
deal with that emotionally, knowing that he was going to start driving?
Oh,
You couldn't wait. I know that
well,
you
I
couldn't
I
wait.
really couldn't. I really couldn't wait. Um, but then, like Everett said, it started to bring up other concerns around it, for safety, just
Mm-hmm.
like you're
Sure.
saying. And maybe some other parents do this too. I did not want to be the one in the car with him. We couldn't really make that work. So had somebody else out for
Mm-hmm.
lessons and those
Yes.
kinds of things, which
Well, and
it,
we actually learned my limitations as to why I was having some of the issues I was
right.
having, and it was hard for me, Sue, I think, to be intellectually aware that things were happening behind the wheel that I couldn't explain. Like in some ways,
Yeah.
right? Like I couldn't explain why my body reacted a certain way, or that
Mm-hmm.
things happened, and it kind of
Right.
uncovered us doing some more discovery about my disability too, and what that actually means
Great.
to be
Yeah.
behind the wheel for an extended period of time. So,
Yes.
well, I mean, really, what it boils down to is I can't be behind the wheel for hours and hours and hours. It
Right.
just fatigues my body, and
And you're,
fatigue
yeah.
wasn't even in our
No.
conversations at all. And now it is very much
Mm-hmm.
in conversations about everything that we do as I turn to be 40 soon. So,
Right. Again, lessons learned from where you
yes,
were,
Yeah.
where you are now.
yes,
Um,
hmm
one more quick question for you, Crystal. So
Okay.
being a grandma, you're also
Yeah.
a mother-in-law, and you may not like the term, but you are. How do you now support Everett and his family? I mean,
Um,
are you a cooker? Do you cook?
no.
See, there we go.
No, no, ask Everett that. He's like, yeah, we'll
Okay,
I,
do
so
something, right?
but you're
I try
there.
not to
You're
laugh. I try
present.
not to laugh. Oh, yes,
You're very present. You
I
you
mean,
you
yes.
somehow he
babysit.
lived. He lived. So we'll
Well,
just say
but
that. But just,
I mean,
advice. So advice on, I don't know. I don't want to just call it advice. Um, it's
it's more than that.
interesting. Like,
It's more than that.
yeah. Well, as a grandmother, still as your child is older, um, we're programmed to offer advice, So I've really learned to
Oh,
zip
duct
it.
tape. Duct tape.
Yep, just zip it. And I'm not zipping it because what they're doing isn't right. Um, but if they ask me a question, um, I'll give my honest answer and an opinion. And it feels good to be able to just be the grandma too, and
Hmm.
she and I do adventures. So that's what we do. We have one coming up, camping. So
Well,
um
well, I guess the other thing too is that my wife loves my mom, but she
that
will
helps.
often say to me, "You guys are super honest with each other, like like almost to a fault." like we are
Mm-hmm.
really open and honest because I think because the way we were, I guess we grew up together in that way. So
Sure.
like
Yeah.
for my wife, it was like super uncomfortable that we could just be like, I'm not doing that, or we're doing this, or I don't like what you said there. You know what I mean? But like there's
Mhm.
it's all love. And I think that for me, it's allowed me to want to ask her advice because
Sure.
I know that she's gonna hear what I say and not say, you're an awful person right away. Like that's not where it
Yeah.
starts. It's a very open and honest, and it always has been. I mean, how many moms can you tell that you went to a party and that they're there to pick you up if something goes wrong? That was my mom, right? Like
Yeah.
my mom helped me arrange a senior trip when I graduated high school with 9 of my closest friends to the beach. Okay. And
It
willingly
was
did that on
terrifying.
purpose. He was scared to death, but I never knew that. Right. But they were all like, your mom's different
Nuts.
than my mom. And
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't mean we didn't have rules though either. So like
Mm-hmm.
there were expectations that were high, but I always knew that I could come to her. And that's translated
Mhm.
into being an adult. And
Very cool.
And it's fun to hear. It's fun to kind of listen in uh, when Everett's saying, "Oh my gosh, she's really being a 3-year old," or "She was really being a 2-year old," and but they are an amazing team together with her, and um, yeah, she just, it's nice to be there if they have a question, and like, how do you get a baby to sleep through the night, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just
Oh,
those
yeah.
little things that I think every grandparent is kind of like, oh gosh, and it
Mm-hmm.
works, right? Like magic. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Very cool.
um,
Speaking
yeah.
of questions, I have
Yeah.
no more questions for you. Do you
Okay.
have any questions, things that maybe came up as we're talking that you wanted to reflect on? If the answer is no, that's okay.
I always do, Mom. So I don't know what you want to say something.
Yeah. Oh,
I
go
I
ahead. I'm
I
sorry. Go ahead.
well, no, go ahead. I was just gonna say I think one of the and I know Sue, like part of this podcast is around like
Mhm.
work and vocational stuff and
Mhm.
all of that. And I think that part of the thing is that people they hyper focus on the end result of school or a
Yep.
job or
Mhm.
life. And I think that you have to start to think about it more holistically, like looking at the whole person too, right? So you get laser focused on that job outcome or that independent living goal. And those are huge things, but you
Mhm.
have to start to think about the future and where do you want to be in the future? Where do you want to be in the end? And what I tell people is that when you're working with young adults, they want to know things like, how do I make money? How do I find friends? How do I maybe find romance? And how do I get away from my parents? That's a lot of what young adults are thinking. And so, not that sounds super negative, but maybe to some parents,
No, it
but
doesn't.
it's starting to think about life outside of just the goal that you feel like you're driving to and think about somebody's hopes and dreams and where they want to be and start to create things around that. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that really helped us to allow me to choose different careers and different paths and to be supportive of each other, I guess,
Mhm.
in that way
Well, and
too.
just maybe one more thing about that. Um, in helping your child feel safe enough and confident enough to go after something and give it a good try, but to also be that kind of soft place to land when it might not go that way, and that's okay, but that we're not going to just fall off the canyon. We're
Mm-hmm.
just going to pick back up and keep moving forward differently, and
Yeah.
that's
And and
okay.
and and small progress is still progress.
Yeah,
Correct.
and I think one of the things that I'm hearing from both of you, but especially from you, Crystal, is you're gonna fall, you're gonna make mistakes. And either as a parent, you have choices. Either you could say, "Oh my gosh, they made a mistake. That means they can't do it."
Mm-hmm.
Versus they made a mistake, let's try a different way. And
Right.
that sometimes I hear from families both ways. And I think
Sure.
you, from what I'm hearing from you, is, let's pick it up and try something different. Let's try a
Right.
different way to do this. We're not giving up, in other words.
Right. Right. And it's okay to go in the corner and wipe your tears and
Hmm.
but there has to be a time that it's okay to just keep moving forward and choose a different direction. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for joining our podcast, Same Page podcast. And I say to all of the listeners and watchers, stay tuned. We have more coming.